really enjoy it. If you had 1 minute with George W. Bush, what would you say, beginning now?
To tell you the honest truth, I doubt very much that George Bush has much to do with policy formation. I mean, the way the presidency is more or less like royalty in the United States. So the Queen of England opens Parliament with a speech, right? But nobody asks whether she believes it, or whether she understands it. Her role is it's a ceremonial role. You present, it's a role that's connected with unity of the people, patriotism, obedience, and so on and so forth. The content is something else. That's by people who run the country. The people who run the country are those in political office, but much more importantly, they're associates in the concentrations of private economic power. That's where the country is really run. And that shouldn't be a big secret either. America's leading social philosopher, John Dewey, who's right, very mainstream American, he pointed out once that as long as we have what he called industrial feudalism rather than industrial democracy, that means tyrannical, totalitarian institutions running the economy, command economies basically. As long as that's instead of industrial democracy, like workers' control and management, as long as we have that, then politics will be the shadow cast by business over society. And that's approximately accurate. Now, it's not that the state has no independent choices, it does, but an amalgam. Exactly the role that George Bush plays in this is very dubious, questionable. In some cases, like, say, Ronald Reagan, he probably didn't even know what the policies were. He was reading off his note cards or the teleprompter or something like that. And Bush may have some knowledge of them, but I think he's mostly a ceremonial figure, trained to act in certain ways and so on. So if I had a minute with him, I would say, have you talked to God lately or something like that?
We have a question from Dan Rigby, a two-part question. If John Kerry wins the presidency, will it make any difference in Iraq? And should Ralph Nader still stand?
If Kerry wins, which I think is unlikely, just looking at the relative funding of the two candidates, and elections are mostly bought, but suppose he does. I doubt if it would make much of a difference in Iraq. Their policies, it's very hard to know what Kerry's policies are. He's been very careful not to, his advisors have been very careful not to formulate them. But chances are it would be more like Albright and Clinton. That is, same policies, but not so stupidly and arrogantly formulated and implemented, which is a difference. And, in a huge system of power like the United States, those small differences can translate into large outcomes. The major difference between the two, I think, would be domestic. The Bush administration are real extremists. It's a narrow political spectrum, but they're way out at an extreme. They want to, and they're pretty brazen and open about it again. They want to dismantle everything that has been achieved by popular struggle over the last century. Everything from the limited measures of social welfare, support systems, pensions, minimal medical care, to progressive taxation. In fact, about anything you can think of. They want to create a real utopia for the masses. Very powerful state, they're not conservatives, a very powerful state which serves the rich and powerful and somehow controls everybody else, one or another means. There is a kind of a quasi-fascist strain there. I don't like to use the term, but it's there. Except that the fascists did develop welfare systems, and they want to destroy those. And the Kerry will be less extreme in this respect, just as Clinton was less extreme. And those make big differences too. Like, you have a disabled mother you have to take care of. It makes a difference how extreme the policies are. Those differences, I think, are significant. That gets to the Nader question.